"Ma'am, this gate is for authorized Boeing personnel only." Diana Washington adjusts her casual jacket, the technical blueprints barely visible in her leather bag. The morning sun streams through Seattle International's massive windows as Flight 447 prepares for its journey to Tokyo with 298 souls aboard. At 38 years old, Diana carries herself with the quiet confidence of someone who's spent 15 years designing the very aircraft that dominates the tarmac before her. "I am authorized," Diana states calmly, her engineer's mind already calculating the critical system failure that wasn't reported. "I need to inspect the aircraft before departure." Security Chief Marcus Thompson's laugh cuts through the terminal noise. At 45, his 12 years managing airport security have taught him to spot troublemakers, and this casually dressed black woman doesn't fit his image of a Boeing engineer. "Right, and I'm the pilot. Show me your credentials, lady." The Boeing 787 Dreamliner sits gleaming on the tarmac, its engines already warming for the transcontinental flight. Passengers stream through the gate, trusting their lives to an aircraft they assume has been thoroughly inspected. What Thompson doesn't know is that Diana didn't just work on this aircraft. She designed the specific hydraulic system that's about to fail at 35 feet. Diana produces her Boeing engineering ID, the holographic security features catching the morning light. But Thompson barely glances at it, his preconceptions already overriding professional protocol. "Anyone can fake these IDs nowadays. I've been doing this job for 12 years, sweetheart." "The hydraulic backup system shows anomalous pressure readings," Diana insists, her voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who's saved lives before. She pulls out a tablet, displaying real-time aircraft diagnostics that shouldn't be accessible to civilians. System 7B is registering fluctuations that could lead to catastrophic failure during flight operations. Thompson's expression hardens. "Lady, I don't care what your fake paperwork says or what fancy computer you're carrying. That gate is restricted, and you're not getting through." Flight 447's captain, unaware of the developing situation, completes his pre-flight checklist. The hydraulic systems register normal on his instruments. The backup warning system hasn't triggered yet, because the failure will only manifest under flight stress conditions that ground testing can't replicate. "If those hydraulics fail during flight," Diana continues, her engineering mind racing through failure scenarios she's modeled 1,000 times, "the pilots will lose control authority. At cruising altitude with that passenger load, recovery becomes virtually impossible." Thompson signals to 2 junior security officers, "Remove this woman for impersonating Boeing personnel and confiscate whatever device she's using to fake aircraft data." As Diana watches helplessly, Flight 447 begins its taxi toward the runway. Through the terminal windows, she sees the Dreamliner's elegant form moving inexorably toward takeoff, its sophisticated systems functioning normally for now. In 12 minutes, 298 passengers will be airborne with a critical system failure that only one person in the world knows how to fix, the woman being escorted away from the gate. Her leather bag contains not just blueprints, but the original engineering specifications for Hydraulic System 7B, signed with her name as lead design engineer. Her casual clothing masks a resume that includes not just Boeing's most advanced aircraft, but military test pilot credentials that could save every soul aboard Flight 447. "Sir, you don't understand," Diana says as security approaches. "I'm not just any engineer. I designed that specific aircraft's hydraulic systems. I know exactly what's going to fail and when." Thompson waves dismissively. "Security! Get her out of here now." The junior officers hesitate, something in Diana's calm professionalism making them pause. But Thompson's authority is absolute in this terminal, and his decision will ripple through the next hour in ways that could define aviation safety protocols for decades. As Diana is led away, Flight 447 reaches the runway threshold. Captain Morrison advances the throttles, trusting in systems that Diana knows are already beginning their catastrophic countdown. The Dreamliner's engines roar to life, lifting 298 souls into what Diana can calculate will become an emergency that tests every system she designed and every backup she created. What Marcus Thompson just did will either make him a hero for preventing a security breach or cost 298 lives, by ignoring the one person who could have prevented disaster. The aircraft lifts off, and Diana's worst fears begin their final countdown. If you believe that aviation experts deserve access to aircraft they designed for safety, type access below. Then comment your country and city. Let's see where people stand for aviation safety worldwide. Your participation shows that expertise saves lives when we recognize it. Diana sits in the airport security office, her Boeing credentials spread across Thompson's desk, like evidence in a trial. Outside the reinforced glass windows, Flight 447 climbs steadily toward cruising altitude. Its 298 passengers settling in for what they believe will be a routine flight to Tokyo. These look pretty convincing, Thompson admits, examining the holographic Boeing ID card under his desk lamp. But identity theft is sophisticated these days. Anyone with decent software can create fake credentials. Diana maintains her composure, though her engineer's mind is tracking Flight 447's ascent profile. Call Boeing's Seattle facility, extension 4472. Ask for the 787 Systems Engineering Department. They'll confirm my identity immediately. Thompson chuckles. Lady, it's 6:30 a.m. on a Tuesday. Nobody's answering phones at Boeing this early. He leans back in his chair, satisfaction evident in his expression. You picked the wrong time for your little impersonation scheme. The irony isn't lost on Diana. She'd arrived early specifically because system failures most commonly manifest during initial flight phases, when hydraulic systems transition from ground to flight configurations. Her timing was perfect for preventing disaster, but perfect for confirming Thompson's suspicions. Check your computer systems, Diana says, her voice steady despite the growing urgency she feels. Boeing maintains a real-time database of authorized personnel. My clearance code is DW7847 Alpha. Thompson types slowly, his hunt and peck method frustrating in its deliberateness. On his outdated terminal, Boeing's security database loads with agonizing slowness. Diana knows that every minute increases Flight 447's altitude, bringing the hydraulic systems closer to the pressure threshold where her predicted failure will occur. Systems running slow today, Thompson mutters, then looks up with renewed suspicion. How exactly did you know about this hydraulic problem anyway? You'd need access to aircraft maintenance logs, pre-flight diagnostics, real-time system monitoring. Diana chooses her words carefully. I have legitimate access to Boeing's engineering database. As a systems designer, I monitor aircraft performance across the fleet. The 787 in Flight 447 has been flagging intermittent pressure variations in hydraulic system 7B for the past 72 hours. So you're claiming you can remotely monitor aircraft systems? Thompson's skepticism deepens. That sounds like hacking to me, sweetheart. Through the office window, Diana can see Flight 447's contrail disappearing into the morning clouds. At this altitude, approximately 15,000 feet based on her mental calculations, the hydraulic systems are beginning to experience the pressure differentials that will trigger the cascade failure she's been tracking. Thompson's computer finally loads Boeing's personnel database, but his search technique is clumsy. Instead of entering Diana's clearance code, he types her name incorrectly, generating a no-match-found result that confirms his preconceptions. Just as I thought, Thompson says triumphantly. Diana Washington doesn't exist in Boeing's system. You searched for Washington. As Diana points out patiently, my engineering credentials are under my military designation, Captain D.R. Washington. The R stands for Reynolds, my maiden name from my Air Force service. Thompson ignores this correction, having already decided Diana's guilt. Military credentials now, let me guess, you're also a secret agent and a brain surgeon. The sarcasm masks a growing unease. Diana's technical knowledge is too precise, too specific to be fabricated. Her casual mention of pressure differentials, system designations, and fleet monitoring protocols suggests expertise that would be impossible to fake convincingly. Diana's tablet chimes softly. She glances at the screen and her expression tightens almost imperceptibly. Flight 447 just passed 18 0 feet. That aircraft will experience hydraulic system failure in approximately 6 minutes. And how exactly would you know their altitude? Thompson demands. Flight tracking is publicly available information, Diana replies. But system failure prediction requires engineering expertise and access to diagnostic data that only Boeing personnel possess. Thompson stands abruptly, his confidence wavering despite his aggressive posture. I've heard enough science fiction for one morning. You're under arrest for impersonating a federal employee, attempting to breach aircraft security, and probably terrorism charges once I figure out how you're tracking Flight 447. Sir, Diana says, her calm beginning to crack as Flight 447 approaches the critical pressure threshold. In 4 minutes, that aircraft will lose primary hydraulic pressure. The pilots will have approximately 8 minutes to execute emergency procedures before secondary systems fail. If you prevent me from assisting them, 298 people will die. Thompson reaches for his handcuffs. The only thing dying here is your little con game. Outside, Flight 447 continues its climb toward destiny, its sophisticated systems functioning normally while countdown toward Diana's predicted failure continues inexorably. The woman who designed those systems sits handcuffed to a chair, watching helplessly as her worst engineering nightmare approaches reality. In 3 minutes, Marcus Thompson's decision will be tested by physics, engineering, and the lives of 298 innocent people. Diana sits handcuffed to the metal chair, her engineer's training warring with growing desperation as she watches the clock tick toward catastrophe. Flight 447 has been airborne for 8 minutes, climbing steadily through 22,000 feet, where hydraulic system pressures reach critical thresholds. Mr. Thompson, she says, her voice carrying new urgency, I need you to understand something about Hydraulic System 7B. It's not just a backup. It's the primary control authority for flight surfaces at high altitude. When it fails, the pilots will have less than 12 minutes before complete loss of control. Thompson finishes his paperwork with deliberate slowness, enjoying his authority over what he believes is an elaborate con artist. Save the technical babble for your lawyer, sweetheart. I've heard every sob story in the book. Diana's tablet, confiscated but still visible on Thompson's desk, shows Flight 447's ascent profile in real time. The aircraft icon climbs steadily on the display, each 1,000 feet bringing it closer to the pressure differential that will trigger system failure. Look at your own monitoring systems, Diana pleads, nodding toward the airport's flight operations display mounted on the wall. Flight 447 is approaching 25,000 feet. At that altitude, hydraulic pressure variations become critical for aircraft that haven't had proper system calibration. Thompson glances at the display dismissively. All I see is a normal flight following normal procedures. Your little computer show doesn't impress me. Diana pulls against the handcuffs, her composure finally cracking. Those aren't normal procedures. The climb rate is too aggressive for an aircraft with compromised hydraulic systems. Captain Morrison doesn't know about the pressure variations because the warning systems won't trigger until it's too late. Captain Morrison? Thompson raises an eyebrow. Now you're claiming to know the pilot personally. I don't know him personally, but his name is on the flight manifest, which is publicly available information, Diana snaps. What isn't public is that he's flying an aircraft with a known engineering defect that I identified but couldn't report because you had me arrested. Thompson's radio crackles to life. Security Chief Thompson, we have Flight 447 requesting priority clearance for emergency descent. They're reporting hydraulic pressure warnings. Diana's blood runs cold. It's happening exactly as I predicted. The primary system failure triggers a cascade that compromises secondary systems. They need to execute emergency descent immediately. Thompson stares at the radio in confusion. That's impossible. You've been sitting here the whole time. How could you know? Because I designed that system, Diana shouts, her professional composure finally breaking. I spent 3 years developing Hydraulic System 7B for the 787 Dreamliner. I know every pressure point, every failure mode, every backup protocol. I've been trying to tell you that aircraft has a critical defect. The radio crackles again. Flight 447 declaring emergency, loss of primary hydraulic pressure, requesting immediate vectors to Seattle for emergency landing. Thompson's face pales as he realizes the magnitude of what's happening. The woman he's been dismissing as a con artist somehow predicted an aircraft emergency with impossible precision. Diana sees his hesitation and presses her advantage. Uncuff me. Now. I'm the only person in this airport who knows the specific emergency procedures for this exact failure mode. Without my guidance, Captain Morrison and his crew are flying blind with 298 souls aboard. This could be coincidence, Thompson mutters, but his confidence is crumbling. Maybe you somehow caused this emergency. With what? Psychic powers? Diana's engineering mind shifts into crisis mode. Listen to me carefully. Flight 447 needs to reduce altitude immediately to decrease hydraulic pressure demands. They need to configure for manual reversion flight controls and prepare for a no-flap landing approach. Thompson's radio erupts with air traffic control chatter. Flight 447, confirm nature of emergency. Do you have control of the aircraft? Partial control only, comes Captain Morrison's tense voice through the static. Primary hydraulics failed. Secondary systems showing pressure variations. We're not sure how long we can maintain controlled flight. Diana strains against the handcuffs. He doesn't understand the cascade effect. Secondary system failure is inevitable without immediate pressure reduction. You have to let me help them. Thompson stares at Diana, then at the radio. Then at her tablet showing Flight 447's erratic descent profile. The coincidence is becoming impossible to ignore. This woman somehow knew exactly what would happen to an aircraft she claimed to have designed. Even if you are who you say you are, Thompson says slowly, I can't just release a suspect and let them interfere with air traffic control procedures. Those procedures don't account for this specific failure mode. Diana's voice carries the authority of someone who spent years anticipating exactly this scenario. Standard emergency protocols assume gradual hydraulic degradation. System 7B fails catastrophically, creating a complete loss of flight control authority. The radio crackles with increasing urgency. Flight 447. Seattle approach. We're showing your descent rate increasing. Can you maintain controlled flight? Negative, Seattle. We're experiencing control difficulties. This is not a standard hydraulic failure. Diana looks directly into Thompson's eyes. Captain Morrison just confirmed what I've been trying to tell you. This isn't standard because I designed it to be non-standard. It's a safety feature that prevents gradual failure, but creates acute emergency conditions that require specific knowledge to resolve. Thompson reaches for the handcuff keys, his hands shaking slightly. The woman before him has demonstrated impossible knowledge of an aircraft emergency that materialized exactly as she predicted. Whether she's the world's most elaborate con artist or exactly who she claims to be, 298 lives now hang in the balance. If you're lying to me, Thompson begins. If I'm lying, Diana interrupts, Flight 447 crashes and 298 people die. If I'm telling the truth and you keep me handcuffed, Flight 447 crashes and 298 people die. Either way, you're responsible for the choice you make right now. The handcuffs fall away, and Diana immediately reaches for her tablet. Diana's fingers fly across her tablet screen, accessing Boeing's internal engineering database with credentials that shouldn't exist if she's an imposter. Real-time telemetry from Flight 447 streams across the display, showing hydraulic pressures, flight control inputs, and system status indicators that paint a terrifying picture. Secondary hydraulic pressure dropping faster than predicted, Diana mutters, her engineer's mind processing data that Thompson can't begin to understand. They've got maybe 4 minutes before complete system failure. Thompson watches over her shoulder, trying to make sense of the scrolling technical data. How are you accessing real-time aircraft information? That has to be classified. Boeing engineers have emergency access protocols for in-flight systems monitoring, Diana explains, without looking up from her screen. When aircraft experience critical failures, we can provide real-time technical support to flight crews. She pulls up a complex schematic showing the 787's hydraulic system architecture. Look at this. Flight 447's aircraft tail number N787BA. I have the complete engineering records for this specific aircraft, including every modification, every maintenance cycle, every component replacement since it rolled off the production line. Thompson squints at the screen, seeing technical drawings that would be impossible to fabricate in real time. Even if that's true, how does that help us now? Diana's expression grows more urgent as Flight 447's telemetry shows increasing control difficulties. Because I know this aircraft's specific configuration, N787BA was part of the early production run that included experimental hydraulic pressure regulation valves. Those valves are failing exactly as I predicted they would under high-altitude pressure differentials. The radio crackles with Captain Morrison's increasingly strained voice. Seattle approach, Flight 447. We're having difficulty maintaining heading and altitude. Request immediate clearance for emergency approach to Seattle. Diana immediately keys her radio. Flight 447. This is Boeing Engineering Emergency Response. Captain Morrison, you need to execute manual reversion protocol immediately. Who is this? Morrison's voice carries confusion and stress. Tower, we didn't request Boeing engineering support. Thompson grabs Diana's wrist. You can't just start talking to aircraft. That's interfering with air traffic control. That's providing emergency technical support. Diana pulls free. Captain Morrison, this is Diana Washington, Senior Systems Engineer for 787 Hydraulic Systems. Your aircraft is experiencing cascade failure in Hydraulic System 7B. Standard emergency procedures won't work for this specific failure mode. Air traffic control cuts in. Unidentified caller, you are not authorized on this frequency. Cease transmissions immediately. Diana ignores the warning. Captain Morrison, your secondary hydraulics will fail completely in approximately 3 minutes. You need to configure for manual flight controls now, before you lose all hydraulic assistance. Boeing Engineering, how do you know the specifics of our system status? Morrison's voice reveals both skepticism and growing desperation. Diana pulls up Flight 447's real-time hydraulic pressure readings on her tablet. Your primary system failed at 25,000 feet with a pressure drop rate of 200 psi per minute. Secondary system is currently showing fluctuations between 1,800 and 200 psi, which indicates imminent catastrophic failure. Thompson stares at the tablet display, watching pressure readings update in real time. How is she getting this information? This has to be some kind of hack. It's not a hack, Diana says tersely. It's emergency engineering protocol. When 787 aircraft experience critical system failures, Boeing engineers can access flight data to provide technical support. Captain Morrison's voice returns, more urgent now. Boeing Engineering, our instruments confirm your pressure readings. How do you recommend we proceed? Diana's fingers dance across the tablet, pulling up specific emergency procedures for manual reversion flight. Captain, you need to select manual reversion on your flight control panel immediately. This will bypass the failed hydraulic systems and give you direct cable control of primary flight surfaces. Manual reversion will make the aircraft extremely difficult to control, Morrison responds. Are you certain this is necessary? Diana glances at her telemetry data, showing hydraulic pressures approaching critical thresholds. Captain, your secondary hydraulics will fail completely in 90 seconds. If you wait for complete system failure, you'll lose all control authority. Execute manual reversion now, while you still have partial hydraulic assistance to help with the transition. Thompson watches the exchange with growing amazement. Diana's knowledge is too specific, too accurate to be fabricated. She's providing real-time technical guidance based on information that only Boeing engineers should possess. Seattle approach, this is Flight 447, Morrison announces. We're following Boeing engineering guidance and configuring for manual reversion flight controls. We'll need extended runway length and emergency equipment standing by. Diana immediately switches to a different screen, showing Seattle's runway configurations. Captain Morrison, recommend runway 16 right. It's 11,900 feet long and has the best emergency equipment positioning. Your manual reversion landing will require significantly more runway distance than normal. Understood, Boeing Engineering. We're grateful for your support. Thompson looks at Diana with new respect, mixed with lingering suspicion. If you really are a Boeing engineer, why didn't you just identify yourself properly from the beginning? Diana doesn't look up from her screen, as Flight 447's telemetry shows the crew successfully engaging manual reversion controls. I tried to. You decided I was a criminal before I could complete my identification. The radio crackles with Morrison's voice. Boeing engineering manual reversion is configured. Controls are heavy but responsive. Thank you for the guidance. Without your warning, we would have lost the aircraft when secondary hydraulics failed. Diana finally looks at Thompson. In 30 seconds, Flight 447's secondary hydraulic system will fail completely, exactly as I predicted. When that happens, you'll understand that I'm not just any Boeing engineer. I'm the engineer who designed the systems that are keeping 298 people alive right now. The radio falls silent for a moment, then explodes with Captain Morrison's tense voice. Seattle approach, Flight 447. Secondary hydraulic system has failed completely. We are now on manual flight controls only. Diana looks at Thompson with grim satisfaction. 32 seconds. I predicted 30 seconds. The cascade failure happened exactly when my engineering calculations said it would. Thompson stares at her tablet display, watching Flight 447's hydraulic pressure readings flatline on the secondary system, while the aircraft continues its emergency descent toward Seattle. This is impossible. How could you predict the exact timing of an aircraft system failure? Because I designed that system, Diana replies, her attention split between multiple data streams. I spent 3 years developing the hydraulic architecture for the 787 Dreamliner. I know every component, every failure mode, every backup protocol. More importantly, I know the specific manufacturing defect that affects early production aircraft like N787BA. Captain Morrison's voice cuts through the air traffic control chatter. Boeing engineering. Controls are extremely heavy but manageable. What should we expect for landing configuration? Diana keys her radio immediately. Captain Morrison, you're now flying the aircraft exactly as test pilots do during certification flights. Pure manual control with no hydraulic assistance. Your approach speed will need to be higher than normal, approximately 180 knots instead of the standard 160. Copy that, Boeing engineering. Can we configure landing gear and flaps normally? Diana pulls up the aircraft's system schematic on her tablet. Negative on flaps, Captain. Without hydraulic pressure, your flap system won't function. You'll need to execute a no-flap landing approach, which means even higher approach speeds and longer landing roll. Thompson watches the technical exchange with growing realization. Diana's knowledge is too comprehensive, too specific to be anything but genuine expertise. You really are a Boeing engineer, aren't you? Senior Systems Engineer for 787 Hydraulic Systems, Diana confirms, still focused on Flight 447's telemetry. But that's not all I am. She reaches into her confiscated leather bag and produces a second credential wallet. Inside, Thompson sees military identification cards, pilot licenses, and certifications that make his eyes widen. Captain Diana Washington, United States Air Force Reserve, Diana says without looking up from her tablet. Military test pilot with over 300 hours in experimental aircraft. I don't just design these systems, I've flown them under every possible failure condition. Thompson examines the military credentials with new respect. You're both an engineer and a pilot. I'm one of only 12 people in the world qualified to both design and flight test advanced aircraft hydraulic systems, Diana replies. That's why I knew exactly what would happen to Flight 447, and that's why I'm the only person at this airport who can talk Captain Morrison through a successful manual reversion landing. Captain Morrison's voice returns over the radio. Boeing engineering. We're configured for approach to runway 16 right. Controls are manageable, but require significant physical strength. My first officer is assisting with control inputs. Diana immediately responds, Excellent, Captain. Remember that manual reversion requires constant control pressure. The aircraft won't maintain trim automatically. You'll need to maintain forward pressure on the yoke throughout the approach to prevent stall. Understood. We're showing approach speed 175 knots. Is that acceptable? Diana checks the aircraft's weight and configuration data. That's perfect, Captain. With no flaps and manual controls, 175 knots gives you the best combination of control authority and landing distance. Thompson listens to the technical exchange, finally understanding the magnitude of his error. I blocked a Boeing engineer and military test pilot from preventing this emergency. You blocked the one person at Seattle International Airport who knew exactly what was going to happen and how to fix it, Diana corrects. But we can discuss my arrest later. Right now, We need to focus on getting 298 people safely on the ground. The airport's emergency coordinator bursts into Thompson's office. Chief, we've got Flight 447 in emergency approach. They're requesting full emergency response, fire, rescue, everything we've got. Diana looks up from her tablet. Tell emergency crews to position for a long landing roll, without flaps and with manual controls. Flight 447 will touch down fast and use most of the runway. They'll need equipment stationed along the entire length of 16 right. Thompson nods to his coordinator. Do exactly what she says. This woman is Boeing engineering and military test pilot. As the coordinator rushes out, Diana returns to her radio communication with Flight 447. Captain Morrison, you're doing everything perfectly. Manual reversion landings are challenging, but you have the training and the aircraft has the capability. Trust your instruments and maintain steady control pressure. Boeing Engineering, thank you for the confidence. We can see Seattle approach now. Emergency equipment is positioned along the runway. Diana watches Flight 447's approach profile on her tablet, noting the aircraft's steady descent and proper speed control. Captain, you're flying a textbook manual reversion approach. Your passengers don't know it, but you're demonstrating some of the finest emergency piloting skills in commercial aviation. Thompson stands beside Diana watching the drama unfold. What are the odds they make it? Diana never takes her eyes off the telemetry data. With Captain Morrison's skill and proper emergency procedures, very good. Manual reversion landings are survivable when executed correctly. The tragedy would have been if they'd tried to land without knowing about the secondary system failure. That would have been catastrophic. The radio crackles with Morrison's final approach call. Seattle approach, Flight 447 on final for 16 right. We have the runway in sight. 298 lives hang in the balance, depending on the expertise of both Captain Morrison and the woman Thompson almost prevented from helping them. Diana reaches into her leather bag and produces a badge that makes Thompson's jaw drop. The Boeing security clearance is platinum level, indicating access to the highest levels of aircraft development programs. But it's the second badge beneath it that stops Thompson cold. Department of Defense, Defense Contract Management Agency, Diana says quietly, watching Thompson's expression change. I'm not just a Boeing engineer. I'm a federal contractor with security clearance for military aircraft programs. Thompson examines the DoD credentials with shaking hands. These are legitimate federal identification cards. You have top secret clearance. I have clearance to design and test flight systems for both commercial and military aircraft, Diana confirms, her attention still focused on Flight 447's approach. The 787 hydraulic systems I developed for Boeing are also used in modified form for Air Force tanker aircraft and Navy patrol planes. Captain Morrison's voice crackles over the radio. Boeing Engineering, we're 3 miles from touchdown. Controls remain heavy but manageable. Our passengers are secured for emergency landing. Diana keys her response immediately. Outstanding, Captain. Remember to maintain control pressure through touchdown and rollout. The aircraft will want to pitch up without hydraulic trim assistance. Thompson stares at the federal credentials, reality finally hitting him. I detained a federal contractor with top secret clearance. I'm going to lose my job. Your job is the least important thing happening right now, Diana replies tersely. We have 298 people approaching an emergency landing that requires perfect execution. She turns to face Thompson directly for the first time since the crisis began. But since you brought it up, yes, you detained a federal employee engaged in official safety duties. You ignored proper identification procedures, and you nearly prevented the successful resolution of an aircraft emergency that could have killed nearly 300 people. The weight of his mistake settles on Thompson like a physical blow. I followed protocol. Your identification seemed suspicious. You followed your prejudices, Diana interrupts. A casually dressed black woman couldn't possibly be a senior aerospace engineer and military test pilot, so you decided I was a criminal without proper investigation. Flight 447's approach continues smoothly. The aircraft visible now through the office windows as it lines up with runway 16 right. Emergency vehicles pace the aircraft along the runway, ready to respond if the heavy landing causes problems. Boeing Engineering, Captain Morrison calls. We're showing 190 knots on approach. Is that acceptable for manual reversion landing? Diana checks her calculations quickly. That's perfect, Captain. You're compensating correctly for the lack of flap assistance. Maintain that speed until you're over the runway threshold. Thompson watches Diana coordinate the emergency response with professional calm that demonstrates years of crisis management experience. How many times have you handled situations like this? More than I'd like to count, Diana replies. Military test flights include deliberate system failures to verify emergency procedures. I've flown manual reversion approaches in conditions much worse than what Captain Morrison is experiencing. She pulls up another screen on her tablet, showing Flight 447's glide path and approach angle. The difference is that test flights are planned emergencies with single-person crews. Captain Morrison is flying a passenger aircraft with 298 souls aboard, executing procedures he's probably never used outside of simulator training. Seattle approach, Flight 447, passing 1 mile final, Morrison announces. We can see emergency equipment positioned along the runway. Are we cleared for emergency landing? Air traffic control responds immediately. Flight 447, you are cleared to land runway 16 right. All traffic is holding clear. Emergency equipment is standing by. Diana keys her final approach guidance. Captain Morrison, you're executing a perfect emergency approach. Trust your training, maintain control pressure, and prepare for a firm touchdown. The aircraft can handle a hard landing much better than it can handle loss of control. Through the office windows, Thompson and Diana watch Flight 447 cross the runway threshold. It's no-flap configuration, requiring the higher approach speed that Diana calculated. The aircraft touches down firmly but safely, beginning its long rollout on the 11,900-foot runway. Seattle approach, Flight 447 is on the ground and rolling out normally, Morrison announces, relief evident in his voice. Emergency is terminated. Boeing Engineering, thank you for your guidance. You saved this aircraft and everyone aboard. Diana finally allows herself a small smile. My pleasure, Captain. That was exceptional airmanship under extremely challenging conditions. As Flight 447 taxis clear of the runway, with all 298 passengers and crew safe, Thompson stares at Diana with new understanding. You didn't just help with this emergency. You prevented a catastrophe that would have been my fault. The catastrophe would have been avoided if you'd followed proper identification procedures, Diana points out. But yes, your decision to detain me nearly cost 298 lives. She begins packing her credentials and tablet back into her leather bag. I assume I'm no longer under arrest? Thompson's radio crackles with his supervisor's voice. Chief Thompson, report to the operations center immediately. The FAA wants to debrief the Flight 447 emergency response. Diana looks at Thompson with professional detachment. I suggest you practice explaining how you nearly prevented Boeing's senior systems engineer from providing emergency assistance to an aircraft she designed. The magnitude of Thompson's error is about to become very public, very quickly. Diana's phone buzzes with an incoming call as she repacks her credentials. The caller ID shows Boeing Emergency Response, Director Level, which makes Thompson realize this situation is about to escalate far beyond airport security. Diana Washington, she answers professionally. Captain Washington, this is Michael Davis, Director of Emergency Response for Boeing Commercial Aircraft. We've been monitoring the Flight 447 situation from our crisis center. Outstanding work coordinating the emergency response. Thompson overhears the conversation and realizes that Boeing's corporate hierarchy not only knows Diana personally, but addresses her by military rank, something reserved for their most senior personnel. Thank you, Director Davis, Diana replies. The flight crew executed manual reversion procedures perfectly. Captain Morrison deserves recognition for exceptional airmanship. Agreed. But we also need to discuss why our senior systems engineer was detained by airport security during an aircraft emergency. The FAA is asking some pointed questions about security protocols that interfere with emergency response. Diana glances at Thompson, who's growing paler by the minute. I'm sure we can resolve that through proper channels, Director. The important thing is that Flight 447 landed safely. Captain Washington, there's something else. Your presence at Seattle International this morning wasn't coincidental, was it? Diana pauses, choosing her words carefully. No, sir. It wasn't coincidental. Thompson leans forward, sensing another revelation coming. Diana's morning arrival at the airport. Her specific knowledge of Flight 447's problems, her immediate access to real-time aircraft data, none of it was accidental. I've been tracking anomalous pressure readings in Hydraulic System 7B across the entire 787 fleet for the past 6 months, Diana continues. Flight 447's aircraft, tail number N787BA, was showing the most concerning data patterns. I came to the airport specifically to inspect that aircraft before departure. Director Davis's voice carries new gravity. So this was a known fleet-wide issue? A suspected issue that I've been investigating through Boeing's engineering analysis program, Diana clarifies. Early production 787s have hydraulic pressure regulation valves that may fail under specific high-altitude conditions. I needed to physically inspect N787BA to confirm my analysis. Thompson realizes the full scope of what happened. Diana wasn't just a random engineer trying to board an aircraft. She was conducting official investigation of a potential fleet safety issue. Director Davis, Diana continues, I recommend immediate inspection of all 787 aircraft from production batch 7 Alpha through 12 Beta. The hydraulic valve failures are predictable, based on flight hours and pressure cycles. Understood. We'll issue an emergency airworthiness directive immediately. Captain Washington, I need you to return to the Boeing facility for a complete technical briefing with our engineering teams. As Diana ends the call, Thompson stares at her with new understanding. You weren't just trying to prevent one aircraft emergency. You were investigating a problem that could affect dozens of aircraft. Diana nods grimly. The hydraulic valve failure that nearly killed 298 people this morning could happen to any early production 787. Flight 447 was just the first to reach the critical combination of flight hours, pressure cycles, and operational conditions. Thompson's radio crackles with increasing urgency. Chief Thompson, the FAA Administrator's Office is calling. They want an immediate report on the Flight 447 emergency response. Diana pulls out yet another credential wallet, this one containing certifications that make Thompson's eyes widen further. Captain Washington, Federal Aviation Administration, Office of Aviation Safety. She reads from her own identification. You work for the FAA too? Thompson's voice is barely a whisper. I'm a consulting engineer for the FAA's Aircraft Certification Service, Diana explains. When Boeing develops new aircraft systems, the FAA requires independent evaluation by certified engineers. I designed the 787's hydraulic systems for Boeing, then certified their safety for the FAA. The scope of Thompson's interference becomes clear. He didn't just detain a Boeing engineer, he detained a Federal Aviation Safety Inspector conducting official investigation of a potential fleet emergency. The reason I have access to real-time aircraft data, Diana continues, is that I'm authorized to monitor 787 operations as part of ongoing safety oversight. When I saw Flight 447's hydraulic anomalies developing, I came to the airport under both Boeing and FAA authority. Thompson slumps in his chair. I interfered with a Federal Aviation Safety investigation. You interfered with an investigation that could prevent multiple aircraft accidents, Diana corrects. If Flight 447 had crashed due to hydraulic failure, and we later discovered that other 787s had the same defect, the FAA would have faced massive litigation and regulatory scrutiny. Her phone buzzes with another call, this time from FAA AOA Director. I need to take this, Diana says, stepping toward the window. Yes, Director Richardson, this is Captain Washington. Thompson watches Diana coordinate with federal aviation authorities, realizing that her morning detention has disrupted not just an individual emergency response, but a complex multi-agency safety investigation involving Boeing, the FAA, and potentially the Department of Transportation. Through the window, Flight 447 sits safely at the gate, its passengers disembarking without knowing how close they came to disaster, or how a security chief's prejudices nearly prevented their rescue. The woman Thompson arrested as a suspected terrorist is actually one of the highest-ranking aviation safety experts in the United States. Diana ends her call with the FAA and turns to face Thompson with an expression that carries new gravity. Director Richardson wants to know why an FAA safety inspector was detained during an official investigation. I told him we'd resolve this professionally. Thompson's hands shake as he reaches for his incident report forms. Captain Washington, I had no way of knowing you were conducting federal safety investigations. You had every way of knowing, Diana interrupts, pulling out a final credential wallet that she hadn't shown him yet. But you chose not to follow proper identification procedures. She opens the wallet to reveal a gold badge that makes Thompson's blood run cold. Special Agent Diana Washington, National Transportation Safety Board, Aviation Safety Division. Thompson stares at the NTSB credentials in horror. You're a federal safety investigator. I'm the NTSB's lead investigator for commercial aircraft hydraulic systems, Diana explains with devastating calm. When aircraft experience the type of failure that nearly killed 298 people this morning, I'm the person who determines whether it was preventable. The full scope of Thompson's error crashes down on him. He didn't just detain an engineer, or even an FAA inspector. He detained the federal investigator responsible for determining the cause of aircraft accidents. The reason I was at Seattle International this morning, Diana continues, wasn't just to inspect Flight 447. I was conducting an undercover investigation of airport security procedures to determine whether security protocols might interfere with emergency response. Thompson's face goes ashen. This was a planned investigation. The NTSB has been reviewing airport security protocols following several incidents where qualified personnel were prevented from providing emergency assistance, Diana confirms. Your detaining me this morning was exactly the type of security interference we've been documenting. She shows Thompson an official NTSB investigation file marked Confidential Airport Security Protocol Review. 12 airports, 47 incidents, where security procedures delayed or prevented qualified emergency response. Seattle International was our final case study. Thompson realizes he's been part of a federal investigation all along. You deliberately tested our security response? I presented legitimate credentials and attempted to perform legitimate safety duties, Diana corrects. Your response was entirely your own choice. The fact that you detained a credentialed federal safety investigator demonstrates exactly the protocol failures we've been documenting. Her tablet chimes with a priority message from NTSB headquarters. Diana reads it quickly, then looks at Thompson with professional detachment. Director Martinez wants a complete report on this morning's events within 4 hours. Your detaining me will be documented as Case Study 48 in our Airport Security Protocol Review. Thompson struggles to comprehend the magnitude of his situation. I'm going to be in a federal investigation report. You're going to be the primary example of how security prejudices can interfere with aviation safety, Diana clarifies. The Flight 447 emergency could have been catastrophic if I hadn't been able to provide technical guidance despite your detention. She begins packing her investigation materials back into her leather bag. The NTSB's report will recommend comprehensive changes to airport security training, with specific emphasis on recognizing legitimate emergency response personnel. Thompson's supervisor appears in the doorway, his face grim. Chief Thompson, I need to see you immediately. We have federal investigators asking questions about your handling of the Flight 447 emergency. Diana looks at Thompson's supervisor. Supervisory Agent Rodriguez, NTSB Aviation Safety Division. She introduces herself, showing yet another credential. I'm conducting the investigation into this morning's security protocols. The supervisor's eyes widen as he recognizes federal authority. Agent Washington, I had no knowledge that we were part of an NTSB investigation. That was intentional, Diana replies. Undercover investigations provide more accurate assessment of actual security procedures. Chief Thompson's response this morning represents typical airport security protocols when presented with unfamiliar credentials. Thompson finally finds his voice. Agent Washington, I followed standard security procedures. I couldn't have known you were conducting a federal investigation. Diana's response carries the weight of federal authority. Chief Thompson, proper security procedures include verification of credentials through appropriate databases. You chose not to verify my Boeing, FAA, or NTSB identification. That choice nearly resulted in the loss of 298 lives. She hands Thompson an official NTSB business card. You'll receive a formal interview request within 72 hours. The investigation will determine whether your actions constitute criminal interference with federal safety operations. As Diana prepares to leave, Thompson realizes that his career in airport security is likely over. He interfered with a multi-agency federal safety investigation and nearly caused a catastrophic aircraft accident through prejudice and procedural failures. Agent Washington, Thompson calls desperately. What happens now? Diana pauses at the door. Now the NTSB determines whether airport security protocols require federal oversight to prevent future interference with aviation safety. Your case will help make that determination. The woman Thompson thought was a criminal impersonator is actually one of the most powerful aviation safety investigators in the United States, and he just became her most important case study. Diana's phone rings as she reaches the door, and Thompson overhears a conversation that reveals yet another dimension of the morning's events. "Washington here," she answers with the crisp professionalism of someone accustomed to crisis management. "Captain Washington, this is Admiral Patricia Collins, U.S. Navy Air Systems Command. We've been monitoring the Flight 447 situation from Norfolk. Are you available for immediate consultation?" Thompson watches Diana's expression shift to one of focused attention. "Yes, ma'am, Admiral Collins. What's the nature of the consultation?" "We have 3 Navy P-8 Poseidon aircraft currently in flight with hydraulic systems identical to the 787 configuration that failed on Flight 447. These aircraft are conducting anti-submarine operations in international waters and cannot immediately return to base." Diana's expertise extends beyond commercial aviation into military systems. "Admiral, are the P-8s experiencing similar hydraulic pressure anomalies?" 2 of the 3 aircraft are showing intermittent pressure variations in hydraulic system 7B. Our flight crews need immediate guidance on whether to abort their mission or continue operations. Thompson realizes that the hydraulic system failure affecting Flight 447 could potentially impact military aircraft operations across multiple services. Diana's engineering expertise is required for both commercial and military aviation safety. "Admiral Collins," Diana responds, "I recommend immediate implementation of precautionary hydraulic pressure monitoring on all P-8 aircraft. The valve failure affects specific production batches that include both Boeing 787s and P-8 Poseidon variants." She pulls out her tablet and begins accessing military aircraft configuration data that Thompson didn't know existed. "I can provide real-time technical support to your flight crews if they experience system failures similar to Flight 447. "That would be invaluable, Captain. Our crews are highly trained, but none have experience with the specific failure mode you identified in the commercial aircraft." Diana coordinates with Navy operations while simultaneously monitoring ongoing Boeing and FAA communications about the fleet-wide hydraulic issue. Thompson watches her manage multiple crisis situations with the calm professionalism of someone who's handled national-level aviation emergencies. "Admiral, I'm transmitting emergency hydraulic procedures specifically modified for P-8 operations," Diana says, typing rapidly on her tablet. "These procedures account for the additional mission equipment weight and extended flight times typical of naval patrol operations." Thompson's radio crackles with another development. "Chief Thompson, we have reports of similar hydraulic anomalies on 2 other 787 aircraft currently in flight. The FAA is requesting coordination with the Boeing engineer who handled Flight 447. Diana overhears the radio call and immediately shifts into full crisis coordination mode. "Admiral Collins, I need to coordinate multiple aircraft emergencies simultaneously. Can you have your operations center conference me with the P-8 flight crews?" "Affirmative, Captain. We're setting up secure communication links now." Thompson watches in amazement as Diana transforms his security office into an impromptu aviation emergency command center. Her tablet displays multiple aircraft tracking screens, hydraulic system telemetry from various aircraft, and real-time communication channels with Boeing, FAA, and Navy operations. This is bigger than just Flight 447. Diana explains to Thompson while managing multiple communication channels. The hydraulic valve defect I identified affects approximately 127 aircraft currently in service, both commercial and military. Thompson's supervisor returns with 2 men in federal suits. Chief Thompson, these are FBI agents investigating potential terrorism charges related to this morning's aircraft emergency. Diana immediately produces her NTSB badge for the FBI agents. Special Agent Washington, NTSB Aviation Safety Division. I'm the investigating officer for this incident. There are no terrorism concerns. This was a mechanical failure I predicted and prevented from becoming catastrophic. The FBI agents examined Diana's credentials with professional thoroughness. Agent Washington, we received reports of an individual with suspicious aircraft knowledge who may have caused the Flight 447 emergency. The individual with suspicious aircraft knowledge is me, Diana replies dryly. I have that knowledge because I designed the systems that failed, and I'm federally authorized to provide emergency technical support to aircraft experiencing those failures. She shows the agents her tablet, displaying the current aviation crisis. Right now I'm coordinating emergency support for 5 aircraft experiencing similar hydraulic issues, 2 additional 787s, and 3 Navy P-8 patrol aircraft. This is a fleet-wide mechanical defect, not terrorism. Thompson realizes that his morning detention of Diana has triggered a multi-agency response involving airport security, FBI counterterrorism, Boeing corporate crisis management, FAA emergency response, Navy Air Systems Command, and NTSB safety investigation. Agent Washington, one of the FBI agents, says, we need to understand how you predicted the Flight 447 emergency with such precision. That level of foreknowledge raised terrorism concerns. Diana pulls up her 6-month investigation file on her tablet. I didn't predict when Flight 447 would experience hydraulic failure. I predicted that early production 787 aircraft would experience this failure when they reached specific combinations of flight hours and pressure cycles. Flight 447 reached those parameters this morning. Her phone buzzes with an urgent call from Boeing. Captain Washington, this is CEO Jennifer Phillips. We need to discuss an immediate fleet grounding of affected 787 aircraft. How many aircraft are currently at risk? Thompson listens to Diana coordinate with Boeing's CEO, while simultaneously managing Navy aircraft emergencies and federal investigation procedures. The woman he detained as a suspected criminal is operating at the highest levels of aviation crisis management. Ms. Phillips, Diana responds, I recommend immediate inspection of all 787 aircraft from production batches 7 Alpha through 12 Beta. Based on flight hour analysis, approximately 89 commercial aircraft and 38 military variants require immediate hydraulic system inspection. The scope of the morning's events extends far beyond Thompson's security office. Diana's engineering investigation has revealed a fleet-wide safety defect that requires coordination between commercial aviation, military operations, federal safety agencies, and law enforcement. FBI, NTSB, Navy, Boeing, and FAA are all coordinating through me because I'm the subject matter expert on this specific failure mode, Diana explains to the confused FBI agents. Chief Thompson's detention nearly prevented the successful resolution of multiple aircraft emergencies affecting both civilian and military operations. Thompson realizes that his prejudice-driven security decision had national implications beyond anything he could have imagined. Diana's coordination efforts pay off as reports begin coming in from the multiple aircraft she's been monitoring. Her tablet displays a real-time status board showing all 5 aircraft currently experiencing or at risk for hydraulic system failures. Boeing emergency response. This is Captain Mitchell aboard Flight 203. The radio crackles. We've successfully executed precautionary landing at Denver International using the guidance provided by Agent Washington. All passengers and crew are safe. Thompson watches Diana track each aircraft's status with the precision of someone managing a military operation. That's 2 commercial aircraft safely on the ground, she reports to her multiple communication channels. 3 Navy P-8s and one additional 787 still airborne. Admiral Collins's voice comes through the secure military communication channel. Captain Washington, our P-8 crews report successful implementation of your modified hydraulic procedures. No system failures experienced during precautionary descent and landing operations. Diana allows herself a moment of satisfaction. Excellent news, Admiral. All 3 P-8 aircraft are safely recovered. Affirmative. Your technical guidance prevented what could have been multiple military aircraft emergencies. The Navy owes you a debt of gratitude. FBI Agent Rodriguez approaches Diana with new respect. Agent Washington, our investigation confirms that you prevented multiple aircraft accidents this morning through predictive engineering analysis and expert emergency coordination. Thompson realizes that instead of detaining a terrorist, he interfered with someone who saved hundreds of lives across both commercial and military aviation. How many people were aboard all those aircraft? He asks quietly. Diana checks her status board. Flight 447 had 298 souls aboard. Flight 203 carried 267 passengers and crew. The 3 Navy P-8s had 33 personnel total. Combined, we're talking about 598 people whose lives were potentially at risk due to hydraulic system failures. The FBI agent closes his investigation file. Agent Washington, the Bureau apologizes for the terrorism investigation. Chief Thompson's report suggested suspicious foreknowledge of aircraft failures, but your credentials and investigation clearly demonstrate legitimate safety oversight. Diana's phone rings with another call from Boeing. Captain Washington, this is Director Davis again. All remaining 787 aircraft with potentially defective hydraulic valves have been safely grounded for inspection. Your fleet analysis prevented what could have been multiple catastrophic accidents. Thompson listens to the conversation, understanding that Diana's morning work has prevented a potential aviation disaster that could have involved dozens of aircraft and thousands of passengers. Director Davis, Diana replies, I recommend immediate development of improved hydraulic valve specifications and mandatory replacement programs for all affected aircraft. This failure mode should never threaten passenger safety again. Agreed. Boeing is implementing your technical recommendations immediately. We're also reviewing security protocols to ensure that our engineers can access aircraft during safety emergencies. As Diana ends the call, Thompson realizes that his detention procedures have become part of Boeing's corporate policy review. They're changing their security protocols because of what happened here. They're ensuring that qualified personnel can provide emergency assistance without security interference, Diana clarifies. Your detaining me this morning demonstrated a gap in aviation security procedures that could have cost hundreds of lives. Diana's supervisor from NTSB calls with an update. Agent Washington, preliminary analysis confirms your hydraulic valve failure prediction across the entire 787 fleet. Congress is requesting briefings on aviation safety oversight and airport security protocol review. Thompson realizes that his morning decisions have escalated to congressional attention. I'm going to be testifying before Congress. The NTSB will present our findings on airport security interference with aviation safety, Diana explains. Your case will be the primary example of how security protocols need reform to prevent interference with emergency response. Boeing CEO Phillips calls Diana with final updates. Captain Washington, all 127 potentially affected aircraft have been inspected and cleared for return to service with replacement hydraulic valves. Your analysis prevented a fleet-wide grounding that could have disrupted global aviation. Diana checks her tablet one final time, confirming that all aircraft are safely accounted for and the immediate crisis has passed. Ms. Phillips, I'll have a complete technical report ready for Boeing engineering review within 48 hours. Outstanding. Boeing is also implementing new identification procedures for our emergency response personnel to prevent future security delays. As the multiple crisis communications wind down, Thompson sits in stunned silence, processing the scope of what transpired in his security office. Diana Washington didn't just resolve one aircraft emergency, she coordinated the successful resolution of multiple potential disasters affecting both commercial and military aviation. Agent Washington, Thompson says quietly, How do I apologize for nearly causing multiple aircraft accidents? Diana looks at him with professional calm. You learn from this experience and ensure it never happens again. 600 people went home safely today despite your interference. Use that knowledge to become better at your job. Thompson realizes that Diana's morning work represents one of the most successful aviation safety interventions in recent history, and his prejudices nearly prevented all of it. The Boeing executives arrive at Seattle International within 2 hours, led by CEO Jennifer Phillips and accompanied by the FAA Administrator, NTSB Director Martinez, and Admiral Collins, representing Navy Air Systems Command. Thompson watches through his office window as a convoy of official vehicles pulls up to the operations center. Chief Thompson, his supervisor says grimly, you're requested for immediate debriefing with federal aviation authorities. This is not optional. Diana gathers her investigation materials and credentials, preparing to join the high-level debriefing that will determine the future of airport security protocols. Thompson, you should understand what's about to happen in that meeting. Thompson follows Diana toward the operations center, his steps heavy with the knowledge that his career is likely over. Agent Washington, how bad is this going to be? That depends on whether you're willing to learn from your mistakes, Diana replies. The federal investigation will focus on preventing future incidents, not punishing past errors. Unless you're uncooperative. They enter a conference room filled with aviation industry leaders, federal officials and military commanders. CEO Phillips rises as Diana enters, acknowledging her with the respect reserved for someone who just saved the company from catastrophic liability. Captain Washington, Phillips says, on behalf of Boeing, I want to thank you for preventing what could have been multiple aircraft accidents. Your predictive analysis and emergency coordination saved hundreds of lives and prevented immeasurable damage to aviation safety. FAA Administrator Richardson adds his recognition. Agent Washington, your identification of the fleet-wide hydraulic defect demonstrates exactly the kind of proactive safety investigation that prevents accidents rather than investigating them after the fact. NTSB Director Martinez addresses the room. This morning's events provide a case study in both successful safety intervention and security protocol failures. Agent Washington's work prevented multiple disasters, but security interference nearly caused those same disasters. All eyes turn to Thompson, who realizes he's about to become the primary example of what not to do in aviation security. Ladies and gentlemen, he begins nervously, I followed standard security procedures. You ignored proper identification verification procedures, Admiral Collins interrupts. Agent Washington presented legitimate federal credentials from multiple agencies. Your failure to verify those credentials compromised both commercial and military aviation operations. Director Martinez opens Thompson's case file. Chief Thompson, Agent Washington presented Boeing engineering credentials, FAA Safety Inspector Identification, NTSB Investigation Authority, and military contractor clearance. Which of these did you attempt to verify? Thompson's silence confirms that he verified none of Diana's credentials properly. The credentials seemed suspicious because of her casual appearance and the early morning timing. CEO Phillips responds with corporate directness. Chief Thompson, Agent Washington's appearance and timing were exactly appropriate for someone conducting legitimate safety investigation. Your assumptions about what an aerospace engineer should look like nearly cost Boeing billions in liability and destroyed our safety reputation. Diana speaks for the first time in the meeting. The security protocol failure wasn't malicious. It was predictable based on unconscious bias and inadequate training. Chief Thompson made assumptions about my identity based on appearance rather than credentials. FAA Administrator Richardson nods, which is exactly why we're implementing comprehensive airport security reform. Personnel making security decisions must be trained to recognize legitimate aviation safety authorities, regardless of appearance. Admiral Collins adds military perspective. The Navy's investigation shows that security delays during aviation emergencies can compromise both civilian and military operations. This incident demonstrates the need for federal oversight of airport security training. Thompson realizes that his case is driving major policy changes across multiple government agencies. What happens to my security clearance and position? Director Martinez answers, that depends on your cooperation with federal training reform initiatives. Agent Washington has recommended that you participate in developing new security protocols rather than facing criminal charges for interfering with federal safety operations. Diana explains her recommendation. Chief Thompson's errors were educational rather than criminal. He can help train other security personnel to recognize the warning signs of legitimate emergency response versus actual security threats. CEO Phillips supports Diana's approach. Boeing agrees that education serves aviation safety better than punishment. We're implementing new training programs where Chief Thompson's experience can help other security personnel avoid similar mistakes. Thompson feels a mixture of relief and humiliation. You want me to help train people not to make the mistakes I made. We want you to help prevent future security interference with aviation safety, Diana clarifies. Your experience this morning, both the errors and the learning, makes you qualified to train others facing similar identification challenges. Admiral Collins concludes, the military supports this approach. Chief Thompson's case will become mandatory training material for all airport security personnel handling military contractor identification. Thompson realizes that instead of ending his career, his mistakes are becoming the foundation for improved aviation security protocols nationwide. I'll cooperate fully with the training initiatives. Diana's investigation has not only prevented multiple aircraft disasters, but transformed airport security procedures to prevent future interference with aviation safety, with Thompson's mistakes serving as the educational foundation for systematic improvement. 6 months later, Thompson stands before a classroom of airport security personnel at the Federal Aviation Administration's training center in Oklahoma City. On the screen behind him is a photograph of Diana Washington receiving the Presidential Medal of Freedom for her role in preventing the 787 hydraulic crisis. Ladies and gentlemen, Thompson begins, I'm going to tell you about the morning I nearly caused multiple aircraft accidents by detaining one of the most qualified aviation safety experts in the United States. The classroom is filled with security chiefs and supervisors from airports across the nation, all participating in the new mandatory training program that emerged from Thompson's case. Diana's NTSB investigation led to comprehensive reform of airport security protocols, with Thompson's experience serving as the primary case study. Agent Diana Washington presented legitimate credentials from Boeing, the FAA, the NTSB, and the Department of Defense. Thompson continues, I verified none of them because I made assumptions about what an aerospace engineer should look like. Diana enters the classroom quietly, now wearing her formal NTSB uniform, with the additional insignia of Presidential Medal recipient and newly appointed Director of Aviation Safety Integration. The students recognize her immediately from the training materials. Chief Thompson, Diana says, taking the podium, has become one of our most effective training instructors because he understands both the mistakes and the consequences. His experience helps security personnel recognize the difference between legitimate safety authorities and actual threats. Thompson nods respectfully to Diana. Agent Washington's patience with my mistakes helped transform a potential career-ending incident into a learning opportunity that benefits aviation safety nationwide. Diana addresses the class. The 787 hydraulic crisis that Chief Thompson helped us navigate led to inspection and repair of 127 aircraft worldwide. Without early identification of the defect, we could have experienced multiple catastrophic accidents affecting thousands of passengers. She displays the final statistics from the hydraulic valve replacement program. 127 aircraft inspected, 89 valves replaced, 0 additional failures. The predictive engineering analysis that Chief Thompson initially dismissed has become standard procedure for fleet safety monitoring. Thompson adds personal perspective. I learned that aviation safety professionals come in all appearances, backgrounds, and presentations. My job is to verify credentials, not judge appearances. Diana shows the class updated security protocols now implemented nationwide. The new verification procedures ensure that qualified personnel can provide emergency assistance without security delays. Chief Thompson's experience helped design these protocols. An instructor from Miami International raises her hand. Agent Washington, how do we balance security concerns with the need to allow emergency access? Through proper credential verification and understanding aviation emergency timeframes, Diana responds. When someone claims aircraft expertise during an actual emergency, verification takes minutes but could save hundreds of lives. Thompson provides practical guidance. The key is immediate database verification of credentials rather than assumptions about legitimacy. Agent Washington's Boeing, FAA, and NTSB identification were all verifiable within minutes. Diana concludes the training session. Chief Thompson's case demonstrates that security mistakes become learning opportunities when we approach them with professional growth mindset. His cooperation with federal training initiatives has helped prevent similar incidents at airports nationwide. As the class concludes, Thompson approaches Diana privately. Agent Washington, I want to thank you again for recommending education rather than prosecution. This training assignment has been the most meaningful work of my career. You've helped train over 2,000 security personnel in the past 6 months, Diana replies. Your experience has probably prevented more aviation safety interference than any single training program in FAA history. Thompson looks at the wall display showing aircraft safety statistics. The numbers are remarkable. 0 security-related delays for aviation emergency response since the new protocols were implemented. That's the real measure of success, Diana agrees. Aviation safety improves when qualified personnel can provide assistance without interference. Your case helped make that possible. As they leave the training center, Thompson reflects on the transformation from his near-catastrophic mistake to his current role improving aviation safety. Agent Washington, do you think other industries could benefit from similar security protocol reform? Diana considers the question thoughtfully. Security and expertise must work together, not against each other. Your experience in aviation could certainly inform security training in other critical infrastructure sectors. Thompson realizes that his morning mistake at Seattle International has become the foundation for systemic improvements in how security personnel interact with technical experts during emergencies. Diana's approach of education over punishment transformed a potential career disaster into a meaningful contribution to public safety. The woman he once detained as a suspected criminal has become both his professional mentor and the architect of aviation security improvements that protect travelers nationwide. Thank you to everyone who typed access and shared your locations with us. Seeing this global community united for aviation safety and expertise proves that recognizing true professionals is a universal value. If this story moved you, please subscribe for more stories of aviation experts triumphing over prejudice. Until next time, remember that expertise and courage can save hundreds of lives when we listen to the right voices.